Greetings! Thank you for lending an ear to The Voice of the Times for Thursday, August 26, 2021. For today's editorial, the Philippines should improve geothermal competitiveness. Despite some progress in developing policies to attract more investment in geothermal energy, the Philippines is still wasting the opportunity to take advantage of its vast resources, a number of recent assessments of the energy sector have concluded. Geothermal energy is a renewable form of energy that uses steam extracted from natural underground reservoirs to drive turbines that produce electricity. Although geothermal energy poses some technical challenges if properly designed and managed, it is a practically infinite source of energy, one that produces no emissions and has only minor environmental impacts otherwise. The biggest advantage to geothermal energy, at least for countries like the Philippines that are fortunate to be able to tap it, is that unlike most other forms of renewable energy, it is constant and can be relied on to provide so-called baseload power. Solar and wind power are unavoidably variable because of the weather, and even hydroelectric power, although more reliable, can fluctuate due to environmental conditions. The Philippines, thanks to its volcanic geology, has one of the highest potential geothermal energy reserves in the world, estimated by an old Department of Energy study published in 2012 and still largely forming the basis for geothermal energy targets at about 4,500 megawatts, or roughly a fourth of the country's electricity demand. Currently, the Philippines meets about 12% of its demand, just under 2,000 megawatts, with geothermal making it the third largest producer of geothermal energy in the world after the United States and Indonesia. Under the Philippine Energy Plan from 2016 to 2030, the DOE targets geothermal to account for 40% of all renewable energy by 2030, with overall geothermal capacity to increase to 4,000 megawatts by 2040. On the occasion of the opening of the 5 geothermal predetermined areas for competitive building at the beginning of this year, the DOE stated that all policies to support the market for renewable energy are now in place and implemented, including the Renewable Energy Portfolio Standards, the Green Energy Option Program, the Enhanced Net Metering Program, and the establishment of the renewable energy market. In addition, Energy Secretary Alfonso Cusi announced in October last year that 100% foreign ownership would be allowed for large-scale geothermal projects in an effort to attract more investors to the sector. The consensus among energy sector analysts and potential investors, however, is that while the DOE's recent policy moves are positive, these do not go nearly far enough to make the Philippines' geothermal sector attractive enough to make the DOE's 2030 and 2040 targets realistic. There are too many issues that are seen as obstacles to the Philippines realizing its geothermal potential. The first is the disconnect between the government's stated aspirations and its glacial pace of planning developments, exemplified by the recent tender of the 5 geothermal PDAs, which together total only 87 megawatts of potential capacity. Renewable energy investors, not just in geothermal, but in other sectors as well, have long complained about apparently arbitrary limits on expansion, which in turn limits investment opportunities. The second issue is that potential geothermal investors see all policies to support the market for renewable energy as sidestepping the biggest challenge, and admittedly the biggest drawback, to geothermal development: its comparatively high startup costs. More so than most other forms of renewable energy, the payoff from geothermal only comes in the long term, although when it does, the return on investment is quite high. According to the US Department of Energy, the rule of thumb is that installation costs for geothermal range from $2.5 million to $5 million per megawatt, not including exploration and development costs. Without substantial upfront financial incentives, whether these are in the form of feed-in tariffs, other tax incentives, subsidized power rates, or even just access to competitive loans, many potential investors will hesitate to enter the Philippine market, or worse, be lured away to other countries such as Indonesia that do offer worthwhile incentives. While the DOE deserves credit for what it has done so far, it should recognize that its policymaking job with respect to geothermal development is far from over. And that's the editorial for Thursday, August 26, 2021. For more news and information, get a copy of the Manila Times on print, subscribe to its digital edition, or log on to www.manilatimes.net. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram, and listen to the Voice of the Times.